Hello, this is Gunjan Bagla of Amrit Inc. in California, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Uwe Kramer in Mannheim, Germany. Dr. Kramer worked with Roche when he interacted with India over several years, and I worked closely with him. So thank you so much, Dr. Kramer, for taking time to speak with me today. You and I visited a number of engineering service providers on our early trips to India together. We went to some large companies and we went to some small ones as well. And I'd just like you to summarize what you found at these companies and what attracted you to work with some of them.
Yeah, thank you, Gunjan, for the invite for that interview. I really appreciate it, and have so very good memories with regards to our interaction, our time in India. And yeah, actually, we visited quite some companies, smaller and small ones and large ones. At that time, I was working in the very early technology development in the medical diagnostics branch. And I was looking on one hand for partners with whom we can develop ideas and concepts, very basic ideas, basic concepts. Let's call this ideation and innovation part of the job. And on the other hand, I was looking for partners who can develop prototypes and production concepts up to, let's say, pre-production level. And I found the strength in ideation and innovation more in the smaller companies, in the more agile companies. However, they had not really the experience and the capabilities in production development and concept refinement, so to really bring it into the market as a product. But that, on the other hand, was exactly what the big players had. And those big players, they were really efficient in doing that. So yeah, very fast, very efficiently. And I was really helpful. I was really thankful that we had both of them.
Great, thank you. Now, you speak English very fluently and you live in Germany. I think some of your colleagues that work with you may not be as fluent in English, and some of them may have had to interact with the teams in India. So give me a little bit of a sense of that cross-cultural communication, both in terms of language and in terms of culture. What were the gaps you encountered and how did you overcome them?
Thanks, Gunjan, for the compliments. But seriously, I'm only trying my best. Yeah, you raise a good point, and I would like to start with this first, the culture or the cultural gap. I think the key is the cultural part. I personally always try to approach partners with respect and empathy. And here I deliberately talk about partners and not about, let's say, service providers.
Yeah.
From my standpoint, in principle, this goes without saying. However, I often saw that Western colleagues were more on the, let's say, demand-driven side here. But respect and empathy, from my experience, always enable communication on eye level. And if that communication on eye level is established, both sides try hard to find a way of decent communication. Deliberately trying to get the job jointly done. And from then on, a language hurdle is not really a problem because both sides really try hard to find the best solution ever. And so I think the bridge is always how I approach partners. And so the bridge is the culture. And so I never felt a cultural gap in that way. I more saw this cultural approach as a to overcome other hurdles. And for the case that we oversaw any cultural hurdles, we always had Amrit at our side.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, when I was writing my book on doing business in India, the publisher wanted me to emphasize the legal aspects and the accounting aspects. And I insisted that the very second or third chapter in my book focus on cross-cultural communication. And it's fascinating for me to hear you mention respect and empathy, because I think those are really the key drivers for a Western executive to be successful in India. You know,
Absolutely.
Anybody can do a B-level job with Indian suppliers, but to get that to the A level, I think requires them to be motivated beyond what a contract or an agreement calls for. And empathy from the Western partner is, I found, a key element. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I can't agree more.
Now, you made maybe a dozen or more trips to India, and I know you fell in love with the country over that time. Can you tell me a little bit about what you would say to, if you met someone on a plane who was going to India for the first time for business, you know, what advice would you give them in order to be successful and in order to survive the surprise that they'll encounter when they get off the plane in New Delhi or Bangalore or wherever?
Yeah, you're really right. I really fell in love with India, kind of fell in love with India. And from my perspective, it was this this mixture of a clear business focus and an underlying warm tonality. Not only what you mentioned, the empathy that a Western executive brings to the Indian partners, but also I always perceived as being welcome. And so in discussion, even in hard business negotiations, there was always a warm underground tonality. And so even that there were a clear focus on results, timeline, budget, you name it, there was always a warm underground tonality, warm, open, caring, supportive culture. And you mentioned it just a minute ago. The key for success needs partnership, or the need of the reason for success is the partnership in the background, and the partnership on eye level. And so these two ingredients, on one hand side, a clear business focus, and clear goals, results, timelines, and so forth. But on the other hand, a communication on eye level, this is key. And I would everyone to try to get on to that level.
Thank you so much for that. Now, you worked with small companies and large companies. I think the smallest one we took you to had only 4 employees at the time, and the largest one might have had more than 100,000 at that time. Did you find the same degree of warmth and this communication skill at both ends of the spectrum?
Actually, yes. Actually, yes. Well, these are large companies. Fair enough. However, the big benefit, a huge benefit of those big companies is that they break their skills down to specific project groups. And so in the end, you work in a project group which more or less resembles a smaller
Right.
company.
Yeah.
However, there are nonetheless differences. So I mentioned it earlier. Big companies, they are pretty good at doing things up to production level.
Right.
And so the mindset is still, even if they are working in smaller groups, kind of startup groups.
Right.
The background, the thinking process is even the thinking process of a big company. And the smaller ones still have this tonality of a smaller, agile company. For example, with a small company, we produced, we developed a concept, a very basic concept for new handheld devices. Let's call it that way, handheld devices. And they should just come up with 5 or 6 different examples of the things and make very early mock-ups, handheld mock-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, without asking, they deliberately went just out of their offices into the street, showed those devices around to get a first feedback, how the handling is, how they are, whether or not they are perceived as complicated or nice or not. So the initiative they showed was really impressive. And that is harder to be found in working groups in larger companies.
Yes.
To do such a thing, they have to go through to go to their superiors and ask for permission and whatnot. Those guys just opened the door, went out in the street.
Right.
And so both aspects are necessary, helpful, and I appreciated very much both of these things.
Great. Great. Thank you. Now you and your colleagues engaged us at Amrit early on in your desire to engage more deeply with India. And I remember spending about a year planning out a number of activities for your company. Can you tell me a little bit about what made you choose a third-party advisor and what made you choose Amrit in particular?
Actually, we choose Amrit since Amrit approached us. It was Amrit approached us and offered the service.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest, we just tried it out, and we were pretty much impressed. It was I was always astonished how many companies, institutions, university departments, startups, and you name it, Amrit knows. So a huge insight and a huge network, obviously, in the background. And if we had requests about specific items, Amrit dug up dozens of options. And so we had really a hard time to filter all these things and then focus on the specific ones, and together with Amrit, and we always found the right ones.
Yeah, one of my other clients was saying once, there's 1.3 billion people in India, and how come you guys know everyone?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of networking your way to the right people, and
exactly.
And that's always been a privilege for us to be able to do that. So now tell me a little bit about what surprised you concerning India over the many years that you have worked with the country. If you can recount an example or two about what might have surprised someone like you.
Let me tell you an anecdote. We once were stuck in traffic, which is not that uncommon in India, right?
Yes, every day.
And there I had pretty much time to look at all these billboards on the side of the road, and there was one billboard that really struck me. It was an advertisement of a motorbike motorbike of an Indian brand. Sorry, I don't remember the brand anymore. But I remember very clearly the slogan over this billboard. It was just, India is faster.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it. India is fast, way faster than we expected. And that kind of summarized what I perceived during our visit. So this will be in my head forever.
Yeah.
It was a reddish motorbike, and it had the headline, the slogan was, India is faster.
The traffic isn't moving, but India is faster. And it is so true. You know, I tell my clients that for every truth in India, there is an equal and opposite truth as well. And that's really what you encountered, you know, traffic not moving at all, but work and other initiatives really moving at very high speed. So on that note, Uwe, thank you very much for making time to speak with me and for sharing your insights. And I hope we can do this one more time sometime in the future. Thank you so much.
Same here. Same here. Thank you.